Hello, my name's Jasper. Welcome back to Buckle Up. And do you want a cheap, small car that will get you just about anywhere? Look no further than this. The Suzuki Swift Allgrip. Yes, that's right, you heard me say Allgrip. That means this car, this little Super Mini, has got an all-wheel drive system. And this is literally the cheapest new car you can buy in Britain today that has got all-wheel drive. I also happen to think that this car is brilliant, so let me explain why. So this new Suzuki Swift is heavily based on the old model, but I think you can agree the outside of the car looks excellent. We have already reviewed the Suzuki Swift on this channel. Harry had one last year, but brief look around the outside. You've got a large front grille. In this case, we've got some black elements here and some gloss black sections as this textured grille. We've got our Suzuki badge up here, and then we've got a little bonnet right up at the top. These headlamp clusters are pretty excellent. You've got LED daytime running lights and LED headlamps on all trims. Halogen indicators at the bottom down here. The front bumper is actually quite simple. It's relatively sleek, pretty stylish, but I do think from some angles it looks a little bit like a whale going What I do like though about the Suzuki Swift is the side profile, and that is for a couple of reasons. Number one, you've got this floating roof effect due to your blacked in B, C and A pillars, so it looks quite premium and stylish. The other thing I like is this very strong crease line that works its way along the entire side of the vehicle. I do think the side looks pretty good. I like how the bonnet sits up here, and I like these 16-inch alloy wheels. All trims come with 16-inch alloys, however, this model is the Ultra, so I get mine polished. How premium. What I will say though is the Suzuki Swift, for such a cheap vehicle, because the starting price of the model range is under £20,000, comes incredibly well equipped. For example, all trims get keyless entry and go, and yes, it's integrated in a very sensible fashion. You need a button, you've got a button, it's a literal button. But you've got features that are quite premium at a very affordable price point in the market. One thing that you can't realistically notice particularly well at the side of the car is that because this is the Allgrip model, this actually sits a little bit higher than the standard model, and my ground clearance is in fact 25mm larger than it is on the standard vehicle, so I can go further. That ground clearance that is, yes, a little bit more, means that I have got 140mm, and the other clue that this can go a little bit further is the fact that when you're back here you can see your teeny tiny little rear differential for that all-wheel drive system. It's not one that you can control, it just engages or disengages when slip at the front wheels is detected, so it's a very kind of simple operation system. Now the back of the car I like, but I also dislike. I like the styling, I really like these rear light clusters, I think they look really premium, and I love the tinted glass and how this roof sits. The thing that I don't like about the back of the car is that Suzuki like to lie with their badges. Number one lie over here, this says hybrid. It's a mild hybrid. It's a 12-volt system, so you've got a beefier starter generator that's integrated with a belt. This should say mild hybrid. And the other lie that Suzuki have put with their badges is this. It says it's a Swift. It is a Suzuki Swift, however, it is not a particularly swift vehicle. Swift by name, not very swift by nature. But we shall talk more about that when we drive it. You've also got your Suzuki badge, you've got a reversing camera which is just kind of plonked on there, but it is great to see technology like that at this end of the market, and you've also got rear parking sensors, 4 of those across the rear bumper. I must say that I do quite like this white pearl paint, however, if you're going to go for a colour like this, your car is permanently going to look filthy, so I would probably be tempted actually to go with the standard paint, which is a really quite nice metallic orange. Let's talk though about practicality, because in this little segment of the market, it's quite important. Back here, I have got 265 litres of space. It's a pretty boxy boot. There is, however, quite a large load lip to lift things over, so the boot is probably about that deep behind this. And then, yes, I've got a false floor, and there is a spare wheel well back here. You can option a spare wheel in. That's currently got a polystyrene knit to hold a few of the tools, but that's really about it when it comes to the boot. You do have a singular hook over here molded into the plastic for a carrier bag, etc. And then you've got a lamp over on that side. However, there is nothing special about this boot. If I do fold these rear seats, which are 60-40 split, that storage space goes all the way up to 589 litres. So for such a small vehicle, this can be quite practical. Much like most super minis, space in the back of the Swift is merely acceptable. What I can say though is when it comes to knee room, I am okay. I'm 173 centimetres tall and I can sit very easily behind my own driver's position. What I would say is that anyone a little bit taller than me may start seeing their head brush the ceiling. Somebody who is 182 centimetres back here would not be particularly comfortable, both in terms of headroom and also knee room, especially if the driver were taller. If this seat comes all the way back, I can still just about fit back here with room to wiggle my knees, but I wouldn't want to do a long journey in the back seats of a car like this. The other thing to talk about back here is, well, not much actually, because it's quite a simple vehicle. You do have ISOFIX points on both of the outer seats, but you don't have a fold-down armrest. You have a singular cup holder at the back of the centre console from the front seats, and you do also have space in the door cards for a reusable bottle of water. That is quite a tight space though, so only a bottle about this size will fit, nothing any larger. Material quality is a bit of a mixed bag. The seats, the fabric on those is really nice. They are very comfortable and very supportive. All of the seats in here are great. However, the door cards are very much functional, to be polite. They're quite scratchy plastic, but then again, you are paying for the base of one of these less than 20 grand. So I can't particularly whinge about material quality too much. What you get is more than acceptable for the amount you're paying. I must say, Suzuki really do trim it down to the bare minimum to keep you happy for the price you're paying. So yeah, you know, it's functional. The front seats of the Swift continue the simple, sensible and functional elements that this car kind of is well known for. So you've got a pretty sensible and simple cabin layout with good materials actually on all of the important touch points. So I've got a faux leather wrapped steering wheel, my dashboard is actually quite nicely styled, and I've got brushed elements on the climate controls. I've got soft touch bits of plasticky rubber on my gear lever and on my handbrake, and I've got some cushioning. I mean, admittedly, it's a very small amount of cushioning, but I do at least have some cushioning in my door card for my elbow. When it comes to the actual cabin layout, it is refreshingly old school in here. So I've got proper controls actually everywhere. There is essentially no functionality buried in this touchscreen because I've got proper physical climate controls, I've got proper stalks, proper buttons on my steering wheel, and I've got ye olde manual gearbox. It is very old school when it comes to this gauge cluster because it's all physical dials still with 2 trip stalks, one of which you actually have to use if you want to change any of the ADAS systems, and you can only do that when you're stationary. So in a way, it would have been quite nice to have a little bit more in the touchscreen, and it's a very rare occurrence when a car reviewer will ever say that. This unit is fine, it's integrated well enough into the dashboard. It is quite slow, but it does offer both wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto, so you can basically ignore the Suzuki system and just go straight for one of those. Connectivity's alright, so that's both wireless, but I do have charging ports down here. I've got USB Type A and USB Type C. I've got a USB for connection to that system, and I've got a 12-volt socket as well. There's a nice little cubby to throw a phone and a pair of cup holders in the centre console, both of which do take a reusable bottle of water. That fits neatly in the door cards as well, which are not felt lined, but they're very functional. And then I've got an extra little bit of storage down here in the center console, as well as heated seat controls. They're only a single stage, but both trim levels of the Suzuki Swift come with front heated seats. When you go for the Ultra over the Motion, you get things like this automatic climate control and electrically folding door mirrors. How swanky. It is a little bit odd that you've got to use your trip stalk so much when there's a blank button on this steering wheel. Don't really know why that's there, because this is fully spec'd out and there's still a blank button there and one on the dashboard and another two below that on the dashboard. My start-stop engine button is over here. These seats are very comfy and the driver's one adjusts for height, the passenger one does not. But in terms of driver adjustability, I've actually been pleasantly surprised with this. I found it very easy to get a comfortable driving position, and my steering column does adjust, thankfully, for both reach and rake. Final element of practicality is the glove box. It is not felt lined and it is not damped, but it is a decent size. And then this cabin, I do actually really quite like it. It's simple, cheap and cheerful, but it doesn't actually feel particularly cheap. Yeah, you've got scratchy elements to it, but in the places that matter, Suzuki have done a really good job of actually disguising how cheap this car is, because it looks way more premium than it actually is when you scrutinise things. But thankfully, the bits you need to touch are actually quite good. The Suzuki Swift really does take a back to basics, simple, old school approach to motoring. And I really do quite like that about it. It's a lovely car to just get in and drive. Let's talk powertrain. So this has a 3-cylinder, 1.2 litre, normally aspirated petrol engine. No turbocharging here, no fancy extra bits when it comes to performance, just 3 little cylinders thrumming away, actually quite quietly. At its peak, this engine produces 82 PS and 112 Newton meters of torque. Those are admittedly pretty small numbers, so this particular vehicle will get from 0 to 62 miles an hour in a rather leisurely 13.6 seconds. This is the slowest trim you can get, and that's because you get a little bit of extra weight thanks to that all-wheel drive system. The standard front-wheel drive model is over a second quicker, and actually, weirdly, the CVT Auto is a little bit quicker than that, but it's a CVT Auto, so to be honest, I would stick with the 5-speed manual because it gives you the most engaging driving experience. It's a pleasing enough gearbox to operate. It latches into gear quite nicely, although it can be a little bit notchy when you're block shifting, so it does take a little bit of getting used to. The action of it is very nice and light though. Speaking of things that are light, the clutch pedal, that's incredibly light, as is the brakes and the throttle. The brakes are a little bit spongy, but the clutch pedal's the one that takes the most getting used to, because to be honest, there is very, very little feeling when you're putting your foot down, and especially as you're bringing it back up. Because the engine's not overly powerful either, it's quite difficult to feel the biting point. The steering of the vehicle is pretty pleasant. There's a decent little bit of feeling and it's not overly assisted, so you can kind of tell what's happening at the front of the car. Now, obviously, with this being a relatively small capacity, low powered engine, you are going to have to do a little bit of frequent work with the gearbox to keep the engine in its power band. But to be honest, it's fine having to do so. It actually gives you a little bit of something to do whilst driving the car. Visibility all round is actually pretty decent. Even with 2 passengers in the back, you've still got a nice window to look through of that rear screen. The door mirrors are great, give you a good view down the side of the vehicle, but also this vehicle is absolutely loaded with safety tech. So I mean, obviously visibility's fine, but if it wasn't, you do get blind spot monitoring as standard on all trim levels. You've got obviously the full suite of traffic sign recognition, speed warning, lane keep assist, and actually in this manual vehicle, you get yourself adaptive cruise control. Obviously, it won't give you a full stop unless you've gone for the auto model, but it's really refreshing to see such a great array of safety tech, some of which isn't mandated, being fitted to a vehicle as standard. You really do get value for money when it comes to the Suzuki Swift. Obviously, putting your foot down, you've got to drop a gear if you want to make anywhere in the region of Swift progress. This is very much a car of Swift by name, not particularly Swift by nature, But even so, it's actually a pleasant vehicle to try and wring a little bit of performance out of. And that's because the engine sounds quite good. It's actually surprisingly rewarding in corners when it comes to hanging on. The grip's good, and the fact you've got that all-wheel drive system, which will shuffle some power back to the rear wheels if some slippage is detected at the front, gives you a nice feeling of reassurance, even if road conditions aren't perfect. I've genuinely really enjoyed driving this in the time that I've had it. As a little vehicle to ferry you and your stuff around in, this is actually pretty good. And it won't cost you a bomb to actually buy. And that's because, yes, this vehicle range starts at under £20,000, and the one that I'm driving today in terms of on the road price should be around £22,600. However, I have had a look on Auto Trader, and you can actually get an Ultra Allgrip just like this one for less than £19,000. So I would suggest, if you were going to buy one of these, shop around and you should be able to get yourself an absolute steal. This car really does offer incredible value for money. And it won't break the bank when it comes to running costs either, because WLTP fuel economy for this car is 57.6 miles to the gallon. Now, I don't think, unless you're an absolute saint, you'll see that in the real world, but my use case is kind of like absolute worst case real world testing, and I have seen 45 miles to the gallon without really trying, and I am driving on steep, hilly roads where you're doing quite a lot of acceleration and braking. I'm not doing much kind of extra urban driving where this setup would be quite efficient. So I think you could easily get 50 miles to the gallon out of this without trying. And realistically, if you are a little bit more gentle on the accelerator than I am, I think you should be able to see 55 without too much trouble either. Problem is that I quite enjoy revving cars like this out because I really do quite like how the engines sound. The other thing about that actually is this car is pleasantly quiet to drive. Suzuki have put a lot of effort with this model into sound deadening and making the cabin a little bit quieter. So unless you're actually really putting your foot down, you don't hear too much noise from the engine. There's very little wind noise or road noise either, so it's quite a nice, pleasant driving experience. The other thing to add is that yes, you've got the mild hybrid system, so what that does is you've got a belt starter generator that's a 12-volt system, and as you're braking, as long as you've not put the clutch in, you will recoup a little bit of energy, and then the starter generator will feed that back in as you're accelerating away to kind of give you a little bit of a boost in fuel economy. So whilst the engine performance figures are broadly the same as the previous Suzuki Swift, you should see about 7% more fuel economy out of this model. Every little really does help when it comes to running costs, and when you're looking at really good fuel efficiency as well as a low purchase price, if you're looking at financing this car, you can get one for less than 200 quid a month if you've got a decent enough deposit. So this is really just an excellent value little car. Plus you've got Suzuki's excellent reputation when it comes to reliability, and if you're servicing your vehicle with them, they will even extend the warranty for you. Overall then, when it comes to drive, it's pretty good fun, pretty reliable, pretty cheap to operate, and very easy to recommend on that basis. So that is the Suzuki Swift Allgrip tested, and if there are two things to summarise this car, it is both the word value and capability, because for such a low price you get an incredible amount of kit. It's a genuinely good drive, and it will go further than any Super Mini in this class thanks to that Allgrip all-wheel drive system. So it really is a very easy recommendation for me if you're after something that's going to be capable, reliable, cheap to run, and actually just looks pretty good and is an all-round good car to drive. That is everything for today's video. If you've enjoyed it, please do let me know by liking, commenting and subscribing if you've not done so already. Whilst you're down there in the video description, all of our social media are linked there, as is our merchandise store, so you can buy some stuff that says buckle up on it if you'd like to support us, or if you'd like to stay right here on YouTube, please remember to turn on channel notifications, and we do also offer channel memberships. That is everything. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!